A mainstay on this series of videos I've been doing on the existence of God has been a focus on Thomas Aquinas' 5 arguments for the existence of God, his 5 ways. And so far on this channel I've covered 4 of those arguments. Today I'm going to be talking about the last one, Aquinas' 5th way. Now the first thing that needs to be said about this argument is that it's often misunderstood. Richard Dawkins, for example, in his book The God Delusion, seems to suggest that Aquinas' argument is basically the same as William Paley's watchmaker argument. And what that argument argues is that there's so much complexity in the material world that there really needs to be a supreme intelligence to explain all that complexity. But that's just not what Aquinas is at all in the 5th way. Aquinas isn't really interested in complexity or anything else like that. Instead, what Aquinas is interested in the 5th way, and really all of his arguments for God, are certain philosophical, metaphysical concepts that we don't really talk about on a day-to-day basis anymore, but that Aquinas thinks can still be defended, and I think probably can still be defended today. And for the 5th way, the concept that he's really interested in is what he calls final causality. For Aquinas, in order to have a complete explanation or a complete definition for anything that exists, you need to know 4 things about it. And he calls those things the 4 causes. First, there's the efficient cause. The efficient cause can be called the what made it of a thing. It's what we most often think of when we think about causality. So it's the workers who put this house together, or the workers at the pencil factory who constructed the pencil. You get the idea. After that, you have material causality. A material cause is the what a thing's made out of. It's the stuff the thing's made out of. The wood of the pencil, the wood of the house. And then next up, you have formal causality. Formal causality is what that stuff that the thing's made out of is shaped into. What the wood of the pencil is shaped into. What the wood of the house is shaped into. And then finally, you have final causes. I think the best way to explain what a final cause is to say that it's what the thing has as its end. What the thing is directed toward. For Aquinas, everything that we see is directed toward some end. Every action it does is directed toward the fulfillment of its existence, which is called its end. And the way he shows that final causality has to exist has to do with regularity. So imagine I go outside to plant an acorn, and I water that acorn every single day. It's going to grow into an oak tree. It's not going to grow into a cactus or into a basketball hoop or into a car. It'll grow into an oak tree. The cause, acorn, will always produce the same effect, oak tree. And Aquinas sees that as pretty universal across the world. Causes always produce basically the same effects. There's a regularity inherent in cause and effect relationships, from the smallest atom to the biggest galaxy. And for Aquinas, the only way to explain this regularity, the only way to explain why cause A will always produce effect A, is if there's something of effect A in cause A. There's something of the oak tree in the acorn. The acorn is in a sense caused by the oak tree. It's aiming at the oak tree as its end. And that's what Aquinas means by a final cause. So the question now is this: how does Aquinas get from the existence of final causes to the existence of God? Well, let's go back to the acorn example. Remember that we said that the acorn is in a sense caused by the oak tree it's trying to grow into, as it's acting to grow into the oak tree. But that oak tree doesn't exist yet. So here's the question. How can the oak tree be a cause of something if it doesn't exist yet? How can anything be a cause of something if it doesn't yet exist? Can it? Well, I can think of at least one example where you have something which doesn't exist yet in the material world, but it seems to still be able to be a cause. Imagine I wanted to build a house. This house doesn't exist yet, but I have a clear idea in my head of exactly what I want that house to look like. When I act to build this house, I'm acting according to the idea of the house I have in my mind. This idea of the house could be said to be the cause of my actions. So the house, which I have envisioned, is the cause of my actions, even though it doesn't exist in the material world yet. So a thing can be a cause of the effect which is aiming toward it if it exists in a mind, even if it doesn't exist in the material world. All right, let's go back to the acorn. The acorn doesn't have a mind, obviously. So does the explanation I just gave with the house and the mind and all that, does that really say anything useful about the acorn? Seemingly not, right? Unless we say that there's a mind extrinsic to the acorn, which is causing the acorn to shoot toward becoming an oak tree. A mind which has the idea of an oak tree inside of it, and which is directing the acorn toward the oak tree as its final end. Okay, what kind of mind could this be? I don't know about you, but I know for sure that I'm not causing acorns to grow into oak trees right now. So it can't be a human mind, right? I'm not doing that, you're not doing that, none of us are causing acorns to grow into oak trees. So it has to be some kind of other mind. And I would say that if we want this thing, this mind, which is directing acorns to become oak trees and directing everything in the material world towards its final end, if we want this to be the final ultimate explanation of why things act towards ends, then it has to not have any goal-directedness within itself. It has to not have final causes. Otherwise, we would have to ask, what explains its final causes? And we would get in an endless loop of mind explaining another thing's final causes, explaining another thing's final causes, etc. So this thing must not have any final causes. But the only way a thing can't have final causes is if it can't change. Because if you're able to be changed, then whatever you're changing toward, you must have as a final cause. So this thing, this intelligence, this mind must not be changing. And as I've laid out in previous videos, if you're the kind of thing that can't change, that can't be changed, then a lot of other stuff has to be true about you as well. You have to not be material, because matter's always changing. You have to not lack anything, because if you lack something, you can gain that something. And if you gain that something, you just changed. So you must have infinite existence in order to not lack anything. So anything real, you must have in perfection. You must have all goodness, therefore, because goodness is synonymous with being. You must have all knowledge, and you must have all power. And the way we differentiate two things is to say that one of them lacks something that the other one has. There can only be one of these things. So we have this mind, which directs everything in the world towards their ends, and in that sense causes those things to act towards their ends, which is all good, all-knowing, all-powerful, infinitely existent, and there's only one of them. So once again, we have the existence of God.